What are you doing in my house?" I screamed with all the strength my lungs allowed me. My heart was pounding so fiercely I felt it would burst from my chest. Kneeling before me, right by the front door of my own home, were my son, Marcus, and my daughter-in-law, Tiffany, with tools in their hands, trying to force the lock. A massive moving truck sat parked directly in front of my lawn, its back door open and some of my furniture already loaded inside. "Mom, you were supposed to be traveling for 2 weeks." Marcus went completely pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. The tools clattered from his hands onto the pavement. "Mother-in-law, we just wanted—" Tiffany stammered, her eyes darting nervously between the truck and me, desperately searching for any believable excuse. But let me tell you how I got to that moment. Let me tell you how a simple change of plans turned into the most painful revelation of my life. My name is Eleanor Tillman, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 67 years old and have been a widow for 5 years. My husband, Bernard, was the love of my life through 42 years of marriage. When he passed, I thought I'd never again feel that soul-crushing, deep kind of pain. I was wrong, because the hurt I felt that afternoon, watching my only son try to rob me, was different. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than anything else. The morning had started like any other. I woke up promptly at 6 o'clock as always. I made my coffee and checked my suitcase for the 3rd time. I had been planning this trip for months. My younger sister Doris, who lives in another state, had insisted I come visit her. "Ellie, you need to get out of that house. You need to distract yourself. Do something different," she'd tell me over the phone every week. And she was right. Since Bernard died, I had barely left this house. The house we built together, where we raised Marcus, where we celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where we lived an entire life. Every corner held a memory. Every room told a story. The taxi arrived on time at 8 o'clock in the morning. I took one last look at my home, locked the door, and put the set of keys in my purse. Marcus knew I was leaving. I had told him about the trip 2 weeks ago. He had even come by the day before to say goodbye and wish me a good flight. Now I realized that visit had a completely different purpose. The airport was crowded as usual. I checked in, went through security, and sat in the waiting area with my favorite book. My flight was scheduled to leave at 11 o'clock in the morning, but at 10:30, a voice announced over the loudspeakers that our flight had been canceled due to technical problems with the aircraft. They offered to rebook us for the next day, but something inside me just said, "Go home." I can't explain exactly what it was. Maybe a mother's intuition, maybe the instinct of a woman who has lived long enough to sense when something is wrong. But I decided not to wait. I grabbed my suitcase, left the airport, and called another cab to take me back home. The ride back took 40 minutes. I stared out the window at the familiar streets of my city, thinking maybe I could try to catch a flight the next day, or perhaps it was a sign that I shouldn't travel at all. Bernard always said I was too superstitious, but he also believed in fate's signals. When the cab turned onto my street, something immediately caught my attention. There was a large truck parked right in front of my house. It was one of those rental moving trucks you get for the day. My first reaction was to think maybe a neighbor was moving, but as I got closer, my stomach twisted. The truck was parked exactly in front of my driveway, and the rear door was open. I paid the cab driver and got out of the car with my suitcase, feeling as if every step weighed a ton. My legs trembled slightly. Something was terribly wrong. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. I walked slowly up the entrance path, and that's when I saw them. My son, Marcus, my only son, the boy I raised, fed, and hugged when he had nightmares, was kneeling in front of my door with a tool in his hand. Beside him, his wife, Tiffany, held a screwdriver. Both were completely focused on prying open the lock to my house. For a second, my mind couldn't process what I was seeing. I just stood there, paralyzed, watching a scene that seemed ripped from a nightmare. Behind them, inside the truck, I could see some of my furniture. I recognized my antique side table, the one I had inherited from my mother. I recognized the dining room chairs that Bernard and I bought on our 10th anniversary. It was then I screamed, "What are you doing in my house?" Marcus dropped the tools and stood up so fast he nearly lost his balance. His face went from pale to sheer panic in a matter of seconds. Tiffany froze with the screwdriver still in her hand, her mouth opening and closing without making a sound. "Mom, you weren't supposed to be traveling for 2 weeks," Marcus stammered, and I could see the sweat forming on his forehead, even though it wasn't hot. "My flight was canceled," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of shock, disbelief, and a rage that was beginning to boil inside me. "But that doesn't answer my question. What the heck are you doing trying to break into my house? Mother-in-law, we just wanted—" Tiffany tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "You just wanted what?" My voice rose an octave. "You just wanted to break in? You just wanted to take my things while I was gone?" I looked toward the truck again, more closely this time. It wasn't just my furniture. I could see boxes, bags, and objects wrapped in blankets. How long had they been planning this? How long had they been waiting for me to leave so they could empty my house? "It's not what you think, Mom." Marcus finally found his voice, though it sounded weak, pathetic. "Can we explain?" "Then explain it," I said, crossing my arms over my chest, trying to control the trembling that ran through my whole body. "Explain to me why my own son is trying to force his way into my house. Explain to me why there's a moving truck full of my belongings. Explain to me why I feel as if my heart is breaking into 1,000 pieces right now." Marcus looked at Tiffany, and in that exchange of glances, I saw all I needed to know. They had planned this. It wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, calculated scheme, waiting for the perfect moment to execute it. "Mom, let me explain." Marcus took a step toward me, but I instinctively backed away. That gesture, that small movement of rejection, seemed to hurt him more than any word. "Things have been tough for us lately." "Tough," I repeated, my voice filled with incredulity. "And that gives you the right to rob me?" "We aren't robbing you." Tiffany finally found her voice, though she sounded defensive, almost aggressive. "We're family. We thought you could help us." "Help you?" I let out a bitter laugh that I didn't even recognize as my own. "Help you by emptying my house while I'm gone, without even asking me, without my permission?" I walked toward the truck. I needed to see with my own eyes what else they had taken. With every step I took toward that vehicle, I felt like I was walking toward my own execution. I climbed the rear ramp and began inspecting the contents. My heart sank further with every object I recognized. There was the porcelain set Bernard gave me on our 25th anniversary, the antique lamps we bought together at that flea market 30 years ago, the paintings that hung in the living room, including the one my mother painted before she died, books, trinkets, even my father's old radio. "How much?" I asked without turning to look at them. My voice was barely a whisper. "How much did you plan to get by selling my entire life?" "Mom, please." Marcus's voice sounded broken behind me. I turned to face them, and the tears I had been holding back began to stream down my cheeks. "I have one very simple question, Marcus. Just one question. And I want the truth. Is this the first time?" The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. Tiffany bit her lower lip, staring fixedly at the ground. "Answer me," I demanded, my voice trembling. "Is this the first time you've been inside my house without my permission?" Tiffany started, but Marcus cut her off. "No," he finally admitted. And with that single word, I felt as if the air had been knocked out of my lungs. "We've been here before, when you went to the grocery store, when you visited Doris, when you went to your doctor's appointments." I leaned against the side of the truck. I needed something to support me because my legs threatened to give way. "How many times?" "I don't know, Mom. Several times in the last 3 months." 3 months. For 3 months, I had been living in my house, feeling safe, feeling at home, while my own son came and went like a thief. All those times I felt like something was out of place. All those moments I thought I was becoming forgetful, imagining I had left an object in a different spot. It hadn't been my imagination. It had been real. "What have you taken?" I asked, although I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Before today, what else did you carry away?" Tiffany and Marcus exchanged another glance, that silent communication of couples who share secrets. "Small things," Tiffany mumbled, "things we thought you wouldn't notice right away." "Like what?" I insisted, feeling the rage bubbling up again in my chest. "Some jewelry," Marcus admitted in a barely audible voice. "Some silver candle holders, a few antique books we thought had value." Every word was like a direct punch to my heart. "My mother's jewelry," I whispered. "The pearl earrings she left me before she died. The necklace she wore at her wedding. I thought I had lost them. I searched the entire house for weeks." "We needed them, Mom," Marcus tried to justify himself. "We had debts. We had to pay." "Then you should have asked me for help," I exploded, my voice echoing down the street. "I am your mother, Marcus. If you needed money, if you were in trouble, you could have told me. But instead, you chose to rob me. You chose to betray my trust in the worst possible way." "We knew you didn't have a lot of money," Tiffany interrupted, her voice taking on a defensive tone again. "You always say your pension barely covers things, that you have to watch every dollar." "And that gives you the right to decide for me?" I shouted. "That gives you the right to break into my house like thieves and take what you want?" I climbed down from the truck and walked toward my front door. I needed to go inside. I needed to see what else had been violated, what else had been touched by hands I believed loved me. I took out my keys with trembling hands and unlocked the door. The inside of my house looked normal at first glance, but when you look closely, when you know every corner of your home, you can see the absences. I could see the empty spaces where my things used to be. The shelf where I kept my grandmother's crystal figurine collection was bare. The cabinet where Bernard kept his antique watch collection had its doors open and the shelves stripped. I walked to my bedroom as if in a trance. Marcus and Tiffany followed me at a distance, not daring to get too close. I opened the drawer of my dresser, the drawer where I kept my most precious treasures. It was practically empty. "The locket," I said, my voice sounding hollow, dead. "The gold locket Bernard gave me on our last anniversary together. It has pictures of the two of us when we were young. Where is it?" Silence. "Where is it?" I screamed, turning toward them with a fury I had never felt before. "We sold it," Tiffany admitted in a low voice. 2 weeks ago, we needed to pay the rent, or we were going to be evicted." I felt as if my heart had been ripped out of my chest. That locket was the most precious thing I owned. It was Bernard's last gift, the final physical piece of our love I could hold in my hands. And they had sold it. They had sold it as if it were any worthless, unimportant object. "How much?" I asked, my voice shaking with contained rage. "How much did you get for it?" $200, Marcus whispered. $200. They had sold 42 years of marriage, of memories, of love, for $200 miserable dollars. I sat on the edge of my bed because if I didn't, I knew I would completely collapse. The tears were falling freely now, and I didn't try to stop them. Marcus approached, trying to put his hand on my shoulder, but I violently pulled away. "Don't touch me," I said with an icy voice. "Don't you dare touch me." "Mom, I am so sorry," Marcus sobbed. "We didn't want it to come to this. We thought if you left for 2 weeks, we could take enough things to solve our problems, and you would never have to find out." "And then what?" I asked, looking directly into his eyes. "Then what, Marcus? When I came back from my trip and noticed my house was empty, what were you going to tell me? That there was a break-in? Were you going to lie to my face while I mourned the loss of everything I loved?" He didn't answer because there was no answer that could justify what they had done. "Who else did you sell my things to?" I continued. I needed to know everything. I needed to know the full magnitude of this betrayal. "Where are my mother's jewels? Bernard's watches? My grandmother's crystal collection?" "There's a pawn shop on 7th Street. Tiffany spoke, her voice small. "We took most of the things there. Some we sold online in those buy and sell groups." "And the money?" I asked. What did you spend the money on that you got from selling my memories? We had debts, Marcus began to explain. The credit card was maxed out. We owed 3 months of rent. The car was about to be repossessed. We had collectors calling us every day, threatening to sue us. And you never thought of asking me for help? I repeated, feeling the disbelief mix with the pain. It never occurred to you to come to me, your mother, and tell me the truth? Marcus ran his hands over his face, and I could see that he was crying too. But his tears didn't move me as they once would have. I could no longer feel compassion for someone who had violated my trust so profoundly and deliberately. We were ashamed, he finally admitted. Ashamed to admit we had failed, that we couldn't manage our own finances, that we were sinking in debt. So you preferred to become thieves? I said with bitterness. You preferred to steal from a 67-year-old woman who lives alone on her pension. That was the best solution you could think of? You're not just an old woman. Tiffany intervened, and there was something in her tone that made me look at her more closely. You own this house, a large house in a good neighborhood. You're worth much more than you think, Ellie. Something in the way she said it chilled my blood. What do you mean by that? Tiffany looked at Marcus, seeking permission or support. I wasn't sure. He shook his head slightly, but she seemed to ignore him. This house is worth at least $300,000, Tiffany said, her words dropping like stones in the silence of the room. Probably more. And you live here alone in this huge house with all these empty rooms while we can barely afford a one-bedroom apartment in the worst part of the city. There it was, the full truth, finally exposed. It wasn't just about the debts. It was about resentment. It was about greed. So you thought I didn't deserve to live in my own house, I said slowly, processing the magnitude of what I was hearing. You thought I had too much and you had too little. It's not fair! Tiffany raised her voice, all pretense of repentance gone from her face. We work 60 hours a week and can barely survive while you sit here alone in this mansion. This is not a mansion, I replied, my voice trembling. It is the home Bernard and I built with 40 years of hard work. It is the house we paid for with every dollar we earned, sacrificing vacations, luxuries, everything you can imagine. This house is filled with memories of an entire life. Memories don't pay bills, Tiffany retorted coldly. Tiffany! Marcus tried to silence her, but she continued. It's the truth, Marcus. Your mother is sitting on a fortune while we're drowning. Why should she have all of this when she doesn't even need it? I stood up, facing her directly. Who are you to decide what I need or don't need? Who gave you the right to judge my life? Someone has to tell the truth. Tiffany crossed her arms defiantly. Marcus never will, because he's too much of a coward. But someone has to. You're watching us sink while you have more than you could use in 2 lifetimes. And your solution was to rob me? My voice rose again. Your great plan was to wait for me to leave so you could empty my house, so you could sell everything I own. What was going to happen next? Were you going to sell the house too? Was that in the plan? The silence that followed was more telling than any confession. Oh God, I whispered, feeling my legs buckle again. You were going to sell my house. That was the final plan, wasn't it? Mom, no! Marcus tried to deny it, but his face betrayed him. How? I asked. I needed to understand the depth of this conspiracy. How did you plan to sell my house without my consent? Tiffany laughed without humor. Marcus has a limited power of attorney, remember? You gave it to him 2 years ago, when you had that surgery and needed someone to handle your affairs while you were recovering. I felt as if the ground were opening beneath my feet. It was true. After my hip surgery, I had given Marcus a power of attorney so he could pay my bills and handle urgent matters while I was incapacitated. It was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to help me. That power of attorney is limited and specific, I said, my mind working quickly despite the shock. It doesn't give you the authority to sell my property. But with a corrupt enough lawyer and some forged documents, Tiffany smiled maliciously, a lot can be done. Tiffany, shut up! Marcus finally exploded. "Just shut up!" But it was too late. She had already said too much. The entire plan was now exposed before me in all its horrifying clarity. They didn't just want to steal my possessions, they wanted to steal my home, the only place in the world where I felt safe, where I could still feel Bernard's presence. "Get out," I said with a quiet but firm voice. "Get out of my house right now." "Mom, please, let me explain." Marcus tried to approach again. "There's nothing to explain," I interrupted him. "I want you to leave my house immediately, and I want you to return everything in that truck, now." "We can't do that," Tiffany said coldly. "Some of those things we already sold. They don't exist anymore." "Then you'll pay me for them," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "You will pay me every cent of the value of everything you've stolen, or I'll call the police." "You'll call the police on your own son?" Tiffany scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. You're too weak to do that." "Try me." I looked her directly in the eye, and something in my expression must have scared her because she took a step back. "Mom, please." Marcus was openly sobbing now. "We don't want it to end this way. We're family." "Family doesn't steal from each other," I replied, feeling every word tear me apart inside. "Family doesn't conspire to take everything from one of their own. What you did is not what family does. It's what strangers, what criminals do." I pulled my cell phone from my pocket with trembling hands. Marcus saw the gesture and paled even more. "Who are you going to call?" he asked fearfully. "First, I'm going to call Doris," I said, referring to my neighbor and best friend. "She's a witness. I need someone else here to see what you've done. Then I'm going to call a locksmith because I'm changing every lock on this house today. And after that, I'm calling my lawyer, Mr. Davies." "Mom, you can't do this," Marcus pleaded. "You'll ruin us. If you call the police, I'll have a record. I won't be able to get a job. You'll destroy us." "You destroyed yourselves," I replied, dialing Doris's number. "I did nothing except be foolish enough to trust my own son." The phone rang twice before Doris answered. "Ellie? I thought you were on the plane." "Doris, I need you to come to my house immediately," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "Something has happened. I need a witness." "I'm on my way," she replied without asking questions, and I could hear the sound of a door closing on the other end of the line. Doris lived 3 houses down. She would be here in minutes. I hung up the phone and looked at Marcus and Tiffany. "You have 2 choices. You can stay here and wait for Doris to arrive, and then we'll call the police together. Or you can start putting back everything in that truck right now, and maybe, just maybe, I'll consider not pressing charges." "This is blackmail," Tiffany spat the words out. I didn't correct her. "This is justice. This is giving you an opportunity you don't deserve. An opportunity I never had when you decided to turn my home into your personal store." Marcus looked at the truck parked outside, then looked at me, and finally looked at Tiffany. I could see the conflict on his face, the internal battle between the son he once was and the man he had become. "All right," Marcus finally spoke, his voice a defeated whisper. "We'll put everything back." "What?" Tiffany stared at him in disbelief. "Marcus, you can't be serious. We need that money. We need those things." "Enough, Tiffany." Marcus ran his hands over his face, looking exhausted and defeated. "This went too far, much farther than it should have gone." "I can't believe you're giving up like this." Tiffany looked at him with contempt. "I knew you were weak, but this—" "I'm not weak," Marcus interrupted her, his voice taking on a tone I had never heard before. "I'm a thief. I'm someone who betrayed his own mother. That's not strong, Tiffany. That's being a coward." For the first time since I arrived, I saw genuine regret in my son's eyes, but it was too late. The damage was done, the trust was broken, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. "Start unloading the truck," I ordered, crossing my arms. "Everything, down to the last item." Marcus nodded and walked out of the house. Tiffany followed him, but not before shooting me a look filled with pure resentment. I stayed standing in my bedroom, looking at the empty drawer where my most cherished treasures used to be, feeling an emptiness in my chest that I knew no returned object could fill. I heard hurried footsteps outside, and then Doris's familiar voice. "Ellie, where are you?" "Here in my bedroom," I called. Doris appeared in the doorway, breathless from running. She was a woman my age, 65, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been my neighbor for 20 years and my best friend for 15. "What happened?" I thought. "Oh my God, is that Marcus out there?" Her eyes widened in surprise as she saw my son and his wife unloading furniture from the truck. "What is going on?" I told her everything. Every painful detail, every devastating confession. Doris listened in silence, her expression moving from surprise to disbelief, and finally to indignation. "That wretch," she said when I finished. "That miserable ingrate, after everything you did for him." "I don't know what to do, Doris," I admitted, feeling the tears threaten to return. "He's my son, my only son. How can I report him? How can I call the police and ruin his life?" "He ruined his own life." Doris placed her hand on my shoulder. "And he nearly ruined yours too, Ellie. What they did is serious. It's not just theft. It's premeditated. It's systematic. They've been coming into your house for months." "I know," I whispered. "I know all of that. But he's still my son." "And you're still his mother," Doris replied firmly. "A mother who deserves respect, love, and honesty, not betrayal, not theft, not manipulation." We walked downstairs together and went out to the front of the house. Marcus and Tiffany were unloading the furniture with slow, resentful movements. They had already returned several pieces, but the truck was still half full. "How much more is there?" I asked. "Quite a bit," Marcus replied without looking me in the eye. "It took us all morning to load it." "Then it will take you all afternoon to unload it," I said without an ounce of sympathy. "I want every single thing back in its exact place, every piece of furniture, every box, every object." Doris stayed with me, a silent but supportive presence. We watched as Marcus and Tiffany worked, sweating under the afternoon sun. Neighbors began to come out, curious about the truck and the unusual activity. I could see the stares, the whispered conversations, the speculation. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door approached cautiously. "Ellie, is everything all right? I thought you were traveling." "The trip was canceled," I replied briefly, not wanting to go into detail. "Oh, what a shame. Well, if you need anything—" She let the offer hang in the air before retreating, clearly sensing there was more to the story, but not daring to ask directly. 2 hours passed. The sun was beginning to descend on the horizon when the truck was finally empty. I went inside the house to inspect, with Doris following me closely. The furniture was back, but everything felt different. It was no longer my safe sanctuary. Now it was a place that had been violated, invaded, desecrated. "A lot is missing," I said, looking at the empty spaces that still remained. "The jewels, the watches, the locket, the crystal collection." "We sold them, Mom," Marcus admitted, entering behind us. "We can't give them back because we don't have them anymore." "Then you'll give me a list," I said with a firm voice. "A complete list of everything you sold, where you sold it, when, and for how much. And you will pay me the true value of each object, not the pennies you probably got at the pawn shop." "We don't have that money," Tiffany protested. "We told you we're broke." "Then you'll get the money," I replied coldly. "You'll get extra jobs. You'll do whatever it takes, but you will pay me every cent." "And if we can't?" Tiffany challenged me. "Then I will press charges," I said simply. "I have a witness now." I pointed to Doris. "I have evidence of attempted breaking and entering. I have your confession recorded." I held up my cell phone and watched as both of them paled, realizing I had been recording the entire conversation since Doris arrived. "That's cheating," Tiffany accused. "No," Doris intervened with an icy voice. "That's smart. That's protecting yourself from people who clearly have no scruples." Marcus slumped onto the sofa, looking completely defeated. How much time do we have? You have 1 month, I decided on the spot. 1 month to get the money and return the value of everything you stole. If not, I will go to the police with everything I have. 1 month isn't enough, Tiffany protested. The debts we have total more than $15,000, and that's not counting what we owe you. That's not my problem, I said, and every word hurt because I knew I was closing a door, possibly forever. You had 3 months to steal from me. You have 1 month to compensate me. You are cruel. Tiffany spat the words out. I didn't correct her. I am fair, something you clearly don't understand. I pulled out my phone again and dialed another number. This time, it was the locksmith I had used before when I lost my keys some years ago. Hello, this is Eleanor Tillman. I need to change every lock on my house, every one. Can you come today? It's urgent. The locksmith said he could be there in an hour. I hung up and looked at Marcus and Tiffany. You have 1 hour before the locksmith arrives, I said. After that, you won't be able to enter this house ever again without my explicit permission. Mom, please. Marcus stood up, approaching me with his hands outstretched in supplication. Don't do this. I'm still your son. A son who stole from me, I replied, feeling my heart break with every word. A son who conspired to take my home. A son who sold the last gift from my late husband for $200 miserable. I was desperate, Marcus sobbed. I didn't know what else to do. You could have asked me for help, I repeated for the 10th time. You could have come to me with the truth. Yes, I don't have much money, but I would have sold some things myself. I would have gotten a loan. I would have done something. But you took that option away from me. You took away my right to decide about my own life, about my own possessions. I'm sorry. Marcus was crying openly now. I am so sorry, Mom. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking about yourself, I said sadly. Only about yourself. Doris gently took my arm. Ellie, why don't you sit down? You've had a terrible day. I can supervise until the locksmith arrives. I nodded, feeling suddenly exhausted. The entire weight of the day, the shock, the betrayal, fell on me like a gigantic wave. I sat in my favorite armchair, the one Bernard and I bought together so many years ago, and closed my eyes. I listened to Doris talking to Marcus and Tiffany in a low, firm voice, making it clear she would stay until they left. I heard the sound of traffic outside, the birds singing in the garden trees, all those everyday sounds that suddenly seemed to belong to another life, to another world where my son wasn't a thief. When I opened my eyes, the locksmith had already arrived. He was a middle-aged man named Mr. Henderson, who had worked on my house before. He greeted me with a kind smile that vanished when he saw my expression and the tense atmosphere in the room. Mrs. Tillman, you said it was urgent, he commented, looking cautiously at Marcus and Tiffany, who were sitting silently at the other end of the room. Yes, I need you to change all the locks, I confirmed, getting up with effort. The front door, the back door, the garage door. All of them? Mr. Henderson asked, surprised. That's going to cost around $400 with labor. It doesn't matter, I said without hesitation. Do it! I watched Marcus wince at the mention of the money, $400 I would have to spend because I could no longer trust my own son. $400 to feel safe in my own home. Mr. Henderson began working on the front door. The sound of his tools filled the awkward silence that had settled in the house. Doris brewed coffee in the kitchen without asking and brought me a cup with 2 spoonfuls of sugar, just how I liked it. Drink it, she ordered gently. You've been through a tremendous shock. I took the cup with trembling hands and drank. The hot liquid comforted me a little, although nothing could truly warm the coldness I felt in my heart. Marcus approached again, moving with the caution of someone approaching a wounded animal. Mom, about the power of attorney Tiffany mentioned. I'll revoke it tomorrow. I'll be going with my lawyer, Mr. Davies, and I'll make sure you have no kind of legal authority over my affairs. None. I interrupted him before he could continue. Mom, please. It wasn't my intention to misuse it, he tried to explain. It was Tiffany who suggested we could... Don't blame your wife. I cut him off again. You made the decision. You entered my house. You stole my things. You sold your father's locket. Those were your decisions, Marcus, yours. But she pressured me, he insisted. She said you were selfish, that you had too much while we suffered. She convinced me we were doing the right thing. And you believed her? I asked with disbelief. You really believed that stealing from your widowed mother was the right thing? Marcus didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. Tiffany stood up abruptly. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you blame me for everything. Marcus is an adult. He made his own decisions. You're right, I agreed, surprising her. He is an adult who made terrible decisions. But you encouraged him. You manipulated him. You pushed him to betray his own mother. I didn't manipulate him, Tiffany protested. I just opened his eyes to reality. The reality that his mother lives like a queen while her son can barely pay the rent. Like a queen? I repeated, feeling the rage bubbling up again in my chest. I live like a queen? I cook my own meals because I can't afford to eat out. I wear the same clothes for years because I can't buy new ones. I clip coupons and wait for sales to buy groceries. That's living like a queen? You have a $300,000 house, Tiffany retorted. A house I paid for over 30 years with the sweat of my brow and my husband's, I replied, my voice trembling. A house I don't plan to sell or mortgage because it's the only thing I have left of my life with Bernard. It's my home, my sanctuary, my refuge. It's a wasted investment, Tiffany said coldly. For you, maybe, I said. For me, it's my life. Mr. Henderson finished with the first lock and started on the back door. Every sound of his work was like a nail in the coffin. Every new lock was another barrier between us. And what happens now? Marcus asked, his voice small. Do you just cut us out of your life? I don't know, I admitted honestly. I need time. I need space. I need to process all of this. Time until when? He insisted. A week? A month? A year? I don't know, Marcus, I repeated, feeling the exhaustion deep in my bones. I don't have the answers right now. I just know I can't look at you without feeling this betrayal that's tearing me up inside. We're your family, he said with desperation. And you treated me worse than a stranger, I replied. You treated me like a target, like a source of easy money, not like a mother, not like a person. Doris reappeared with more coffee, this time also bringing me some cold water. Ellie, do you want them to leave now? I can ask them to wait outside while the locksmith finishes. I looked at Marcus and Tiffany. My son looked destroyed, his eyes red and swollen from crying so much. Tiffany looked resentful but defeated, knowing she had lost this battle. Part of me wanted to kick them out immediately, never to see them again. But another part, the part that was still a mother, despite everything, wanted to hug him and tell him everything would be all right. But I couldn't do that. Not yet. Maybe never. They can stay until the locksmith finishes, I finally decided. But after that, I want you to leave and not come back without calling first. If you show up here unannounced, I will call the police. You would call the police on your own son? Marcus asked in disbelief. After today, I don't know what you're capable of anymore, I replied with brutal honesty. So yes, I will call the police if necessary to protect myself. Those words seemed to hit him harder than anything else I had said. He sank back onto the sofa with his head in his hands, silently sobbing. Mr. Henderson worked for another hour, changing 3 locks in total, and handed me a complete set of new keys. He also offered to install additional security deadbolts, but I declined. I had spent enough money for one day. Mrs. Tillman, if you ever need to change the locks again or have any security problems, don't hesitate to call me, Mr. Henderson said upon finishing, putting away his tools. He gave me his card and a sympathetic look that suggested he had understood more of the situation than I would have liked. I paid him in cash, money I had saved for emergencies. I never imagined an emergency would be protecting myself from my own son. After Mr. Henderson left, I turned to Marcus and Tiffany. It's time for you to go. Marcus slowly stood up, like a man walking toward his execution. "Mom, can I at least give you a hug? Can I at least say goodbye properly?" I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the baby I had held in my arms, the teenager I had helped with homework, the young man I had watched marry with hope and love, and I felt nothing. A void where unconditional love used to be. "No," I said simply. "Right now, I can't bear for you to touch me." I saw the pain in his eyes, and a small, cruel part of me was glad. I wanted him to feel, even if it was a fraction of the pain I was feeling. "I understand," Marcus whispered. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I know those words mean nothing now, but I'm saying them anyway." "You're right," I said with a hollow voice. "They mean nothing." Tiffany didn't say anything. She just picked up her purse and walked toward the door. Marcus followed her after one last look at me, a look full of regret and despair. "Remember," I said before they left, "you have 1 month to get the money and return what you stole. If not, I'm going to the police with everything." "We'll get it," Marcus promised, though his voice lacked conviction. And then they were gone. I heard the sound of their footsteps fading away, the moving truck's engine starting, the vehicle driving off down the street, and then, for the first time all day, there was silence. Doris closed the door and slid the bolt of the new lock. The sound was definitive. Final. "Ellie," Doris said softly, coming to sit next to me. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. And finally, I allowed the tears to flow freely. "I'm not okay at all." Doris hugged me as I cried. I cried for the lost innocence, for the broken trust, for the relationship that might never be repaired. I cried for the son I thought I had, and for the man he had truly become. I cried for Bernard, wishing he were here, wishing he could tell me what to do. "Let it out," Doris murmured, stroking my hair like a mother would. "Cry all you need to. You've earned it." I don't know how long we stayed like that. The sun had completely set when I finally pulled away from her, my eyes swollen and my throat sore from all the sobbing. Doris brought me a tissue and a glass of cold water. "Thank you," I whispered, drinking the water slowly. "Thank you for being here. I don't know what I would have done without you." "You don't have to thank me," Doris replied firmly. "That's what friends do, real friends." That word real resonated in my mind. Real friends, real family. What did those words really mean? I had thought family was sacred, that blood was thicker than water, that a son would always be a son. But today had taught me that family could betray you as profoundly as any stranger, perhaps more profoundly, because you trusted them in a way you would never trust anyone else. "You need to eat something," Doris said, getting up from the sofa. "I bet you haven't eaten all day." She was right. My last meal had been breakfast that morning, an entire lifetime ago, but the idea of eating made my stomach turn. "I'm not hungry," I protested weakly. "I don't care." Doris was already in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator. "You're going to eat even if I have to put it in your mouth myself. You've had a tremendous shock, and you need to keep up your strength." She made me a simple sandwich and a hot soup she found in the pantry. She forced me to eat while she sat across from me, watching me like a hawk. Every bite was difficult to swallow, but I did it because I knew she was right. I needed to maintain my strength for what would come next. "So what now?" Doris asked when I finished eating. "What's your plan?" "Tomorrow I'm going to see my lawyer, Mr. Davies," I said, having thought about this over the last few minutes. "I need to revoke that power of attorney immediately. After that, I need to make a complete inventory of everything they stole and estimate its true value." "I can help you with that," Doris offered. "I have a good memory for details. I remember many of the things you had." "Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude toward this woman who had shown up without question, who had stayed by my side through the entire horrible day. "I also need to decide if I'm really going to press charges if they don't pay me." "Do you have doubts?" Doris asked with surprise. "He's my son, Doris," I sighed. "I know what he did. I know he has no excuse. But he's still my son." How can I send my own child to jail?" "You wouldn't be sending him," Doris replied with gentle firmness. "He sent himself with his actions. You are just protecting your rights, your property, your security." "I know that in my head," I admitted. "But my heart says he's my baby, the child I raised, fed and nursed when he was sick." "That child grew up," Doris said softly, "and the man he became made choices that have consequences. You can't protect him from the consequences of his own actions forever, Ellie. Sometimes love means letting people face what they've done." Her words made sense, but that didn't make them any easier to accept. Doris stayed with me until late that night. We went through every room in the house together, making notes of what had been returned and what was still missing. The list of lost objects was devastating. My mother's jewelry, valued at least $5,000. Bernard's antique watches, which had been appraised at $3,000 some years ago. My grandmother's crystal collection, irreplaceable, but probably valued at around $2,000. And the locket, my precious locket, which was priceless to me, but which they had sold for $200 miserable dollars. "They're looking at a debt of at least $15,000, Doris calculated, reviewing our notes. "And that's being conservative with the estimates. Some of these things could be worth much more." "They'll never have that money," I said with certainty. "They already said they have $15,000 in debts. How are they going to come up with another $15,000 in 1 month?" "Then you'll go to the police," Doris said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Then I'll go to the police," I repeated, testing the words in my mouth. They felt strange, wrong, as if I were speaking a foreign language. That night, after Doris finally went home, I stayed awake for hours. The house felt different. Every creak made me jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. This place that had been my sanctuary for decades now felt like a violated, unsafe space. I got up and checked all the locks 3 times, then 4 times, then 5. I knew it was irrational, that the locks were new and secure, that Marcus and Tiffany no longer had keys, but I couldn't stop myself. Fear had settled into my bones in a way I couldn't shake. Finally, around 3 o'clock in the morning, I fell asleep on the sofa with all the lights on, unable to bear the idea of sleeping in my bedroom where much of the confrontation had occurred. I woke up with the sun streaming through the windows and my body aching from sleeping in an uncomfortable position. For one blessed moment, I didn't remember anything. Then everything came rushing back like a cold wave, and I had to take several deep breaths to keep from starting to cry again. I forced myself to get up, make coffee, and follow a normal routine, even though nothing was normal. I called my lawyer, Mr. Davies, as soon as his office opened at 9 o'clock in the morning. "Mrs. Tillman, what a surprise," he said, with his professional but kind voice. "How can I help you?" "I need an urgent appointment," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to revoke a power of attorney and possibly discuss filing criminal charges." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Criminal charges? Is everything all right?" "No," I admitted. "Nothing is all right, but I prefer to discuss it in person." "I can see you this afternoon at 2 o'clock, he offered. "Does that work for you?" "Perfect," I accepted. "I'll be there." I spent the next few hours preparing for the meeting. I organized all my notes, the recording of the confrontation with Marcus and Tiffany, the photos I had taken of the moving truck, and the objects being returned. Doris was right about being meticulous with documentation. If this was going to involve the police, I needed solid evidence. At 1:30, I dressed in my best outfit, one Bernard always said made me look powerful and elegant. I needed to feel powerful today. I needed to feel I still had control over something in my life. Mr. Davies' office was downtown, in an old but well-maintained building. I had known him for years. He had handled the sale of our first house. He had helped with Bernard's will. He had been a constant presence during the important legal moments of my life. His secretary ushered me in immediately. Mr. Davies stood up from his desk when I entered, and his concerned expression told me that something in my appearance revealed the trauma I had experienced. "Mrs. Tillman, please sit down," he said, gesturing toward a comfortable chair in front of his desk. "You look, well." "No," I said honestly, sitting down. "I'm not well, but I need your help to fix this." And then I told him everything, every painful detail of that horrible day. Mr. Davies listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes, his expression growing graver with each revelation. "This is serious, Mrs. Tillman," he said when I finished. "Very serious. We're talking about theft, possible forgery of documents, conspiracy. Your son could face years in prison." "I know," I whispered. "Why do you think I'm so distraught?" "I understand your conflict," Mr. Davies said with compassion. "He's your son, but you also need to protect yourself. First, we will revoke that power of attorney immediately. I can prepare the documents today." "Thank you," I said with relief. "Second, we need to decide about the criminal charges," he continued. "You have solid evidence, the recording, your neighbor's testimony. The facts are clear. But once you file the charges, there's no turning back. The legal process will run its course." "I gave him a month," I explained. "A month to return the value of what they stole." Mr. Davies nodded thoughtfully, clasping his hands on his desk. "1 month is reasonable, considering the circumstances, but we need to formalize this. It can't just be a verbal agreement. We need a legal document that clearly establishes the terms." "What kind of document?" I asked, relieved to have someone who knew how to handle this professionally. "I will prepare a restitution agreement," Mr. Davies explained. "It will detail every stolen item, its estimated value, and the total amount they must return. It will also include a specific deadline, 30 days from signing, and the consequences if they fail to comply, which would be the immediate filing of criminal charges." "They would have to sign it?" I asked. "Yes," he confirmed, "and we'll need them to do so before a notary. That makes it legally binding. If they don't sign, well, that in itself would be an admission that they know they did something wrong and aren't willing to make amends." "And if they sign but don't pay?" My voice trembled slightly. "Then you have a legal document proving they admitted to the theft and agreed to restitution," Mr. Davies said firmly. "That makes pressing charges much simpler. They would essentially be condemning themselves." I nodded slowly, processing everything. "How long will it take you to prepare that document?" "I can have it ready tomorrow morning," he replied. "I will also include a clause prohibiting any unsolicited contact with you or entry onto your property without your explicit written consent, basically a civil restraining order." "Thank you, Mr. Davies," I said, feeling for the first time since yesterday that someone was on my side, protecting me. "I don't know what I would do without your help." "That's what I'm here for," he replied with a kind smile. "Now, let's talk about the power of attorney. Do you have the original document?" I took the document out of my purse. I had kept it in my safe at home along with other important papers. Mr. Davies reviewed it carefully, frowning as he read. "This power is quite broad," he commented with concern. "More than it should be for a temporary post-surgery power. Who drafted this?" "A lawyer Marcus recommended," I admitted, feeling a new weight in my stomach. "He said he was a friend of his, that he would give us a good price." "Mrs. Tillman," Mr. Davies looked at me seriously, "this document gives your son authority over virtually all your financial and legal affairs. With this, he could theoretically sell your house, empty your bank accounts, take out loans in your name. Do you realize how dangerous this is?" I felt like I had been hit, but the lawyer said it was standard, that it was what was needed to handle my accounts while I was recovering. "He lied to you," Mr. Davies said bluntly. "He was either incompetent or he did it intentionally. I suspect it was the latter. Did you pay for this service?" "Marcus paid," I remembered. "He said it was his gift to me so I wouldn't have to worry about legal expenses while I was sick." "I understand." Mr. Davies made some additional notes. "We need to revoke this immediately, and I also need to look into that lawyer. Do you remember his name?" I gave him the name and watched Mr. Davies' expression darken even further. "I know that man," he said with disgust. "He's had several complaints filed with the Bar Association. He works in gray areas, let's say. I wouldn't be surprised if he intentionally collaborated with your son on this." "You mean Marcus planned this 2 years ago? The magnitude of the betrayal kept growing. It's possible, Mr. Davies said carefully. Or perhaps he just wanted to have the option just in case. Either way, that power of attorney should have been revoked a long time ago. The fact that your son never suggested it is telling. I left Mr. Davies's office 2 hours later with a clear plan but an even heavier heart. The power of attorney would be officially revoked the next day. The restitution agreement would be ready in 48 hours, and if Marcus and Tiffany failed to comply, I would have everything needed to press charges that could send them to prison. When I got home, I found Doris waiting for me in her yard. She approached immediately when she saw me get out of the cab. "How did it go?" she asked with concern. "It's handled," I replied tiredly. "Mr. Davies is preparing everything, but I found out something worse, Doris. The power of attorney I gave Marcus 2 years ago was much broader than it should have been. It basically gave him total control over my financial life." Doris paled. "Oh my God, Ellie, you mean he could have sold my house without my knowledge," I finished the sentence for her. "He could have emptied my accounts. He could have done anything. And the lawyer who drafted the document is known for working in the gray areas of the law." "So Marcus planned this 2 years ago," Doris said, what we were both thinking. "Or at least made sure he had the necessary tools when the time came." I nodded. I don't know which is worse. That night, I slept poorly again. Nightmares tormented me. I dreamed I came home and found it completely empty. I dreamed I opened my drawers and everything had vanished. I dreamed of Marcus's face, but it was the face of a stranger, someone I had never truly known. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I couldn't go back to sleep. I got up, made coffee, and sat in the kitchen watching the sunrise through the window. My phone rang around 7 o'clock. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but finally did. "Mom." It was Marcus's voice, broken and desperate. "Please don't hang up." I should have hung up. I should have ended the call immediately, but something in his voice stopped me. "What do you want, Marcus?" I asked with a tired voice. "I need to talk to you," he said quickly, as if afraid I would cut him off at any moment. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain something." "You explained plenty the other day," I replied coldly. "No, I didn't," he insisted. "There are things I didn't tell you, things you need to know." "More lies?" I asked bitterly. "No, the truth," his voice cracked. "The whole truth, the truth I should have told you months ago." I sighed deeply. Against my better judgment, against all the warnings in my head, I said, "You have 5 minutes. Talk." I heard him take a deep breath on the other end of the line. "I lost my job 8 months ago. Not 3 months ago, like I told you. 8 months ago, I was laid off due to company restructuring." My hand gripped the phone tighter. "And why didn't you tell me?" "Shame," he admitted. "Pure shame. You were always so proud of me, of my career, of how well I was doing. I couldn't bear to tell you I had failed." "Losing a job isn't failing, Marcus," I said, feeling a mixture of frustration and pain. "It's something that happens to people. You could have told me." I know now." His voice trembled, but at the time, all I could think about was how disappointed you would be, so I lied. I told you everything was fine, that the job was great, that we were financially secure. "Meanwhile, you were sinking in debt," I said, beginning to understand the whole picture. "Yes," he confirmed. "We used credit cards to keep up the appearance of normalcy, to pay the rent, to buy groceries, to make it look like everything was okay when I came to visit you. And then the debts grew so much we couldn't even make the minimum payments." "And that's when you decided to rob me," I said, not softening the words. "That's when Tiffany started talking about you," Marcus said. "About how you lived alone in that big house, about how you had all those old things that were worth money." I ignored her at first, but the debts kept growing. The collectors wouldn't stop calling. We were about to be evicted. "And then you decided your mother was the easy solution," I finished for him. "It wasn't like that," he protested weakly. "Or maybe it was. I don't know anymore, Mom. My head was so confused. I was so desperate. Tiffany kept saying we'd just take a few things you wouldn't notice right away, just enough to get us out of the jam. And the locket? I asked, my voice breaking. Was that just enough to get you out of the jam? Silence on the other end of the line. Then, in a barely audible voice, we needed to pay the rent. We were being kicked out that very day. The locket was the most valuable thing we could find quickly. Mom, I'm so sorry. If I could go back in time— But you can't, I interrupted him. You can't go back in time, Marcus. You can't undo what you did. You can't give me back the trust you broke. I know. Marcus sobbed on the other end of the line. I know, and it's killing me. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face, that expression when you caught us. I've never seen so much pain in your eyes, Mom. And knowing that I caused that pain— Why are you calling me, Marcus? I asked, interrupting his monologue of self-pity. What do you really want? I want you to know that Tiffany and I are separating, he said. And those words took me completely by surprise. What? Was all I could say. After we left your house the other day, we had a terrible fight, he explained. The worst of our marriage. I told her we never should have done what we did, that it was unforgivable. She said I was weak, that I was pathetic for feeling guilty. She said you had more than you needed, and there was nothing wrong with taking what was rightfully ours. What was rightfully yours? I repeated in disbelief. Nothing in my house belonged to you, Marcus. Nothing. Exactly what I told her, he continued. And she insisted we were family, that family shares everything, that your house should practically be ours too. That's when I realized something terrible, Mom. What? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. That she never truly loved me. His voice completely broke. She loved me for what I could give her, for the security I provided, for the future possibilities, and when I lost my job and couldn't maintain that image anymore, she started looking for other ways to get what she wanted, and I was stupid and desperate enough to play along. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to console my son, tell him everything would be all right, but another part, the part that was still bleeding from the betrayal, remained cold and distant. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said finally. Tiffany may have suggested the idea, but you made the decision. You entered my house. You took my things. You sold your father's locket. You. You're right, he admitted. And I'm going to make things right, Mom. I got a job yesterday. It's not much, just a warehouse job, night shift, but it pays $20 an hour. And I also got a second job during the day at a gas station. Between the two jobs, I can make around $2,500 a month. I did quick mental calculations. That wouldn't be enough to pay $15,000 in 1 month. I know, he said with frustration. I've been thinking about it nonstop. I'm trying to sell my car. I could get about $5,000 for it, and I have some things I can sell, my computer, my guitar, anything of value. And Tiffany? I asked. Is she contributing to this? She left, he said. She just packed her things last night and moved in with her sister. She said if I was idiotic enough to ruin our lives for a selfish old woman, then she didn't want to be a part of it. The phrase selfish old woman hit me like a slap. That's how she saw me. That's how she had probably seen me for years, only I had been too blind to notice. So you're alone, I observed. Yes, he confirmed. But maybe that's what I need. Maybe I've needed to be alone for a long time to figure out who I really am, without someone else telling me what to think or what to do. Marcus, I appreciate you calling me and telling me all this, I said carefully. But it doesn't change the situation. My lawyer is preparing a restitution agreement. You will have to sign it before a notary, and if you can't pay the full amount in 1 month, I will have to press charges. I understand, he said with a resigned voice, and I accept it. Whatever you decide to do, Mom, I accept it. I deserve it. It's not about what you deserve, I replied, feeling the tiredness in every word. It's about protecting myself, about making sure this never happens again. It will never happen again, he promised vehemently. I swear it on Dad's memory. I will never do anything like this again. The mention of Bernard cut through me like a knife. Don't swear on your father, I said with a trembling voice. Don't bring his name into this. He would be devastated if he knew what you did. I know, Marcus sobbed. And that's what hurts me the most. Knowing that I disappointed not only my mother, but also the memory of my father. We ended the call shortly afterward. There wasn't much more to say. Marcus promised to be available to sign the agreement when it was ready. I promised nothing. I couldn't promise forgiveness. I couldn't promise a repaired relationship. I could only promise I would think about everything he had said. 2 days later, Mr. Davies called me to say the agreement was ready. Marcus came to his office that afternoon, looking haggard and exhausted. He had deep circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. He had lost weight. His clothes hung loosely on him. "Hi, Mom," he said when he saw me, his voice barely a whisper. "Marcus?" I replied with a brief nod. Mr. Davies had us sit down and explain the terms of the agreement. Marcus listened in silence, nodding occasionally. When Mr. Davies finished, Marcus signed without asking questions, without trying to negotiate. His signature trembled slightly on the paper. "I understand I probably won't be able to pay everything in 1 month," he said after signing. "But I want you to know I'm going to try with everything I have. And if I can't, I'll accept the consequences. I won't run away. I won't hide. I'll face what I did." I nodded, not trusting my voice to speak. Seeing him like that, so broken and defeated, broke my heart despite everything. He was still my son. That part was never going to change, no matter what he had done. The following weeks were the hardest of my life. Every day I woke up feeling the weight of the decision I would have to make. Marcus called me weekly to report his progress. He had sold his car for $4,000. He had sold his computer, his guitar, his television, everything he owned of value. He had secured a third job on the weekends. He was working nearly 80 hours a week, barely sleeping. "I've gathered $10,000, he informed me in the third week. "I know it's not enough, but I'm trying." "Mom, I promise you, I'm trying." Doris came to visit me every day. She brought me food, forced me to go for walks, and kept me sane. One afternoon, while we were having tea in my living room, she asked me the question I had been avoiding. "What are you going to do when the month is up?" she asked directly. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "I don't know, Doris. I see how hard he's working. I see that he's genuinely repentant, but that doesn't change what he did." "No, it doesn't change it," Doris agreed. "But you have to decide what's more important to you, justice or family." "Why can't I have both?" I asked with frustration. "Maybe you can," Doris said thoughtfully, "but probably not in the way you expect. Justice doesn't always come from the courts, Ellie. Sometimes it comes in other forms." Her words gave me a lot to think about. I spent sleepless nights, struggling with my conscience. I thought about Bernard, about what he would advise me to do. He had always been gentler than me, more forgiving, but he had also been firm with boundaries and consequences. A week before the deadline expired, Marcus showed up at my door. He had called first, asking permission to visit. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. He had lost at least 15 pounds. His face was gaunt, with deep lines of exhaustion and stress. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He entered cautiously, like a frightened animal. He sat on the edge of the sofa with his hands clasped between his knees. "I have $10,000, he said, without preamble. "I know it's not enough. I'm missing $5,000. I've tried everything, Mom. I've worked until I thought I'd collapse. I've sold everything I owned. I even tried to get a loan. But without a stable job and with my credit history ruined, no bank would give me anything." "Marcus," I began, but he raised his hand. "Let me finish, please," he pleaded. "I know the agreement says that if I don't pay the full amount, you'll press charges. And I understand that. I accept it. But before you do, I need to tell you something." "I'm listening," I said softly. "These last 30 days have been the worst of my life," he began, his voice trembling. but they've also been the most revealing. Working all those jobs, living alone, having time to think about what I did, about who I had become. I realized something, Mom. What? I asked. I realized I lost my way a long time ago, Marcus continued, tears streaming down his cheeks. Dad died, and I didn't know how to handle it. Instead of talking to you, instead of processing my grief, I just buried it. I focused on work, on pretending everything was fine, on being the man I thought I should be. I felt my own throat tighten. We hadn't truly talked about Bernard's death. Not the way we should have. We had both suffered in silence, each trying to protect the other. And then I met Tiffany, he continued, and she was so self-assured, so determined. She made me feel like I could be strong again. But what she was really doing was letting another person make decisions for me, letting another person tell me who I should be. Marcus, we all make mistakes in relationships, I said softly. That doesn't justify— I know, he interrupted me. I'm not trying to justify anything. I'm just trying to explain how I got to the point where I thought stealing from my own mother was an acceptable option. I had lost my moral compass. Mom, I had lost sight of who I really was. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand, a gesture so familiar from when he was a child that I felt a sharp pang in my chest. These 30 days, working non-stop, living with almost nothing, facing what I did, it was like waking up from a nightmare, he said. And I realized something else. I realized that what I regret most isn't that you found out. It's that I did it in the first place. It's that I betrayed everything Dad taught me, everything you taught me about honesty and integrity. What do you expect me to do with this, Marcus? I asked, my voice breaking. What do you expect me to say? Nothing, he replied, surprising me. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't expect you to forget what I did. I just wanted you to know that these 30 days changed my life. They taught me who I never want to be again, and no matter what you decide to do, whether you press charges or not, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man Dad would have wanted me to be. We remained in silence for a long moment. I could hear the wall clock, the same one Bernard and I had bought on our trip to Europe 25 years ago. Each tick-tock seemed to mark the weight of the decision I had to make. Do you still have the $10,000? I finally asked. Marcus nodded, pulling a thick envelope from his jacket. It's all here, in cash, as the agreement specified. I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. $10,000, 30 days of grueling work, of sacrifice, of facing consequences. It wasn't the full amount, but it was evidence of a genuine effort. I'm going to keep this, I said, and I saw his shoulders slump with relief. But I'm not going to press charges. Not yet? His voice was filled with cautious hope. Listen to me carefully, Marcus, I said firmly. I am not forgiving what you did. I'm not saying everything is okay. I'm saying that I see your effort. I see your genuine repentance. And I believe that sending you to jail won't repair our relationship or give me back what I lost. Then what? He started to ask. The remaining $5,000, I continued. You'll pay that with time. With time? He asked, confused. Once a week, I explained, an idea forming as I spoke. You'll come to my house. You'll help me with the things I need, repairs, yard work, whatever it is, and we'll talk. We'll really talk, not just small talk. We'll talk about your father, about your grief, about how to rebuild trust. I saw the surprise on his face. You're giving me another chance? I'm giving you the chance to earn one, I corrected. But understand this clearly. The locks remain changed. You will not have keys to this house ever again. If you want to visit me, you'll call first. If I need help, I'll call you. But you will never again enter my home uninvited. Understood? Understood. He nodded vigorously. Mom, I promise I won't disappoint you again. I hope so, I said, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. Because this is your last chance, Marcus. If you betray my trust in any way again, there will be no more conversations. I will file charges immediately. "I won't," he promised. "I swear it on Dad's memory, on everything sacred. I won't fail you again." This time, when he mentioned Bernard, it didn't hurt as much because I could imagine my husband approving of this decision. He always believed in second chances. He always believed in redemption. But he also believed in consequences and clear boundaries. Marcus stayed a little longer. We had coffee together, something we hadn't done in months. The conversation was awkward at first, filled with pauses and tense silences, but gradually we began to talk about real things. He talked about how difficult it had been to lose his father, about how he had felt he had to be strong for me when, in reality, he was also broken. I talked about my own loneliness, about how every day in this big house reminded me of what I had lost. "We should have had these conversations 5 years ago," I said finally. "Yes," Marcus agreed, "but I guess it's better late than never." When he left that night, I hugged him for the first time since the day of the confrontation. It wasn't like before. There wasn't that unconditional warmth and trust, but it was a start, a small step towards something that, perhaps with time and effort, could heal. Doris came to visit me the next day, curious to know what I had decided. "I'm not going to press charges," I told her, "at least not right now." "Are you sure?" she asked, studying my face carefully. "No," I admitted honestly. "I'm not sure of anything, but I am sure that sending my son to jail won't give me back what I lost. It won't give me back Bernard's locket. It won't give me back the trust. It would only add more pain to an already painful situation." "You are stronger than you think," Doris said, taking my hand, "and wiser." "I don't feel wise," I sighed. "I feel tired." "Forgiveness is tiring," Doris observed, "but resentment is more tiring, and resentment lasts longer." She was right, as always. In the weeks that followed, Marcus kept his word. He called before every visit. He came once a week to help with chores around the house. He repaired the garden fence that had been broken for months. He cleaned the gutters. He painted the guest room that had been needing a new coat of paint for years. And we talked. We talked about Bernard, about the good times and the difficult ones. We talked about his childhood, about the memories we shared. Slowly, very slowly, we began to rebuild something. It wasn't what we had before. That was lost forever. But it was something new, something built on honesty and clear boundaries instead of assumptions and blind trust. Months later, as I sat in my living room one quiet afternoon, I realized the house felt different. It no longer felt violated or unsafe. It felt like my home again, but a home I now protected with greater care. The new locks weren't just metal and mechanisms, they were symbols of healthy boundaries, of necessary protection. I thought about everything I had lost, my mother's jewelry, Bernard's watches, the precious locket. I would never get them back. That pain would always remain. But I had also gained something. I had gained the knowledge of my own strength. I had learned that love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be hurt. I had learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. I got up and walked to the front door, running my hand over the new lock. I remembered the words Doris had said months ago, words that now resonated with deep truth in my heart. "Not every closed door is bitterness," I whispered to myself. "Some are protection." I closed my eyes and could feel Bernard's presence around me in every corner of this house we built together, and I knew with a deep certainty that he would be proud of me, not necessarily for forgiving our son, but for protecting myself first, for setting boundaries, for knowing that true love includes respect, and respect requires limits. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. It was the end of a day, but also the beginning of something new, a new way of living, more cautious perhaps, but also more conscious, stronger, more my own. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.